The dust settled slowly in the pale light of the distant sun. Blue stood motionless, his 4 eyes fixed on the wall before him. His hands trembled as he brushed away centuries of dirt, revealing patterns that shouldn't exist. Not here. Not this deep. Not this old. "Lead researcher, you need to see this," his assistant called from the chamber's far corner. But Blue couldn't look away from what he'd found. The markings were identical to those in his research files, the ones he'd been told to ignore. The dig site on Moon TR7 had seemed ordinary when they'd started 3 cycles ago. Standard protocol, standard expectations. Find some ruins, catalog some artifacts, write another paper about the spread of young civilizations across the galaxy. Instead, they'd found this. The chamber stretched deep into the moon's core, its walls lined with technology that hummed with life even after millions of years. Blue's scanner showed power readings that defied explanation. The metal itself was unknown to their database, yet somehow familiar. "It's impossible," Blue muttered, his secondary hearts beating out of sync. "The dating can't be right." But the numbers didn't lie. The walls around them were over 2 million years old, long before any known species had achieved spaceflight, before most had even evolved. His assistant, Gray, worked quickly at the main console they'd uncovered. "Lead researcher, the symbols. They match." Gray's voice cracked. They matched the ones from that restricted file about Earth. Blue's protective membrane rippled with anxiety. Earth, the planet of contradictions. Home to the humans, the strange bipedal species that had emerged onto the galactic stage just 3 centuries ago. The ones who seemed too advanced too quickly, yet claimed such a short history. The central display flickered to life, responding to their presence. Images filled the air around them. Star maps, equations, and engineering diagrams that made their most advanced technology look like children's toys. But what froze Blue's breathing sacs was the unmistakable image at the center. A human figure, dressed in garments that matched the architecture around them. "This has to be a mistake," Gray whispered. "The Council says humans only achieved spaceflight 500 years ago." "They can't be." He couldn't finish the sentence. Blue moved deeper into the chamber, his scientific training battling with the impossible truth before him. The evidence was overwhelming. The architecture, the technology, the physics equations that filled the walls. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Humans weren't newcomers to the galaxy. They were the ancestors, the ones who came first. His communicator chimed. Another team had found something in the eastern chamber. More proof. Blue knew he should report everything to the Council immediately. It was protocol. But his inner membranes churned at the thought. This discovery would shatter the established order of the galaxy. The humans themselves claimed no knowledge of this history. Their recorded civilization stretched back only a few thousand years. How could they be the ones? The first spacefaring race. The legendary elder species that all others had evolved in the shadow of. As Blue documented the chamber's contents, his mind raced through the implications. If humans were truly the first, why had they hidden it? Why pretend to be young and inexperienced? The technology in this single room could revolutionize space travel, energy production, maybe even the fundamental understanding of physics itself. The answer hit him as he translated another section of text. The words were clear, written in an ancient form of human script. "Remember the price. Remember why we chose to forget." Blue's hands shook as he sent the preliminary report to his ship's secure database. The truth couldn't be hidden, not anymore. But as he stared at the warning etched by human hands millions of years ago, he wondered if perhaps they had been right to try. Gray appeared at his side, clutching a small device they'd found embedded in the wall. "Lead researcher. It's asking for genetic verification. It's asking for human DNA." Blue looked at the device, then at the vast chamber of lost knowledge around them. Tomorrow, the galaxy would begin to change. The younger races would learn they weren't as young as they thought, and humanity would have to face a past they had chosen to forget. He sent one final message to his ship, Inform the Council. We found them. We found the first ones. And they've been watching us all along. Captain Mark sat in his office aboard the Earth Defense Station, staring at the flood of messages filling his screen. In 20 years of service, he'd never seen anything like it. Every alien embassy was requesting meetings. Every research vessel in the sector wanted permission to scan Earth's surface. Something had spooked the galaxy, and nobody would tell him why. The station's eye chimed again. Sir, 3 more diplomatic vessels have entered the solar system. They're all requesting immediate audience with Earth's leadership. He rubbed his temples, wondering if he should have stayed a simple ship captain instead of accepting this desk job. Any of them saying what this is about? No, sir, but I'm detecting unusual activity from the alien archaeological community. Over 200 requests for access to Earth's oldest dig sites in the past hour alone. The door slid open, and Dr. Reed walked in without knocking. The historian's usually neat appearance was disheveled, her eyes wide with excitement. Captain, have you seen it? The news from TR7. Seen what? I've got the entire galaxy knocking at our door, but nobody's telling me why. She placed a tablet on his desk. This was just leaked from the Galactic Council's emergency session. They tried to keep it quiet, but she gestured at the screen. The images showed a massive chamber filled with technology that looked both alien and strangely familiar. The symbols on the walls made his head hurt. They were like the cave paintings found in France, but mixed with advanced mathematical formulas that shouldn't exist. This site is over 2 million years old, Dr. Reed said quietly, and everything about it points to us, humans. We built it. Mark's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. That's impossible. We barely made it to Mars 500 years ago. Did we? Dr. Reed pulled up more images. Look at these gaps in human evolution. The sudden jumps in our development. The way our DNA contains redundant systems that no other Earth species has. We've been asking the wrong questions all along. The station AI interrupted again. Sir, the Galactic Council has officially requested Earth's presence at an emergency session. They're calling it the human question. Mark studied the images again. The architecture in the ruins matched patterns he'd seen in ancient human structures. The mathematical formulas were written in a way that felt natural to his human mind, even though they described physics far beyond current science. If this is true, he said slowly, why don't we remember? How could we forget being this? Dr. Reed's eyes sparkled. That's the real question, isn't it? And I think I know where to look for answers. She pulled up a map of Earth. These sites here, and here, they're older than we thought possible. The alien archaeologists are right to be interested, but they're missing something crucial. She zoomed in on a location in South America. This isn't just a temple complex. Look at the layout. It's a data storage facility. We just never knew what we were looking at because we assumed our ancestors were primitive. Mark's communicator buzzed. The council was getting impatient, but something in Dr. Reed's words struck a chord. You think we chose this, chose to forget. Think about it, she said. If we built that facility on TR7, we had power that staggers the imagination. Technology that still works after millions of years. We weren't destroyed. We weren't invaded. The evidence suggests we deliberately went backwards. The station shuddered slightly as another diplomatic vessel docked. The galaxy was waking up to a truth that would change everything. Humanity wasn't just another young species finding its way among the stars. They were the ones who came first, who built the foundations that others had built upon. The council session starts in an hour, Mark said, standing up. I want you there with me, Doctor. If we're going to face these questions, we need answers. Real ones. Dr. Reed gathered her data tablets. The answers are already here, Captain. In our DNA, in our oldest stories, in the ruins we thought were just the remnants of primitive peoples. We just have to remember how to look. As they headed for the diplomatic shuttle, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to remember something they had chosen to forget, and he wondered if maybe, just maybe, there had been a very good reason for forgetting in the first place. The ground beneath the ancient pyramid rumbled as modern machines met technology that shouldn't exist. Dr. Reed watched the holographic display as drill after drill broke against the strange metal surface they'd discovered. Only when they tried the sonic resonator did the hidden door finally respond, sliding open with a soft hum that seemed impossible for something so old. Teams of human and alien scientists crowded the entrance, their instruments showing readings that defied explanation. The chamber beyond held perfectly preserved machinery, its surfaces gleaming as if they'd been polished yesterday, not buried for countless millennia. "It's the same material we found on TR-7, Blue said, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly as he scanned the walls. The alien archaeologist had joined Earth's research team after his discovery, driven by a need to understand. But this is even older. Dr. Reed stepped through the doorway, her hand trailing along symbols that matched those found in caves around the world. But here, they weren't crude paintings. They were control panels, their surfaces responding to her touch with soft lights and quiet sounds. "We built this," she whispered. "All those ancient sites we thought were temples or tombs. They were technology centers, libraries, research facilities. We just couldn't see them for what they were." The chamber extended deep into the earth, its corridors branching out like roots from a massive tree. Each room, they discovered, held new wonders. Machines that defied gravity, screens that pulled information from thin air, and devices whose purpose they couldn't even guess at. In the central chamber, they found something that made even the alien scientists step back in awe. A massive sphere of shifting energy hung suspended in the air, its surface covered in mathematical equations that wrote and rewrote themselves endlessly. "It's some kind of database," one of the alien technicians said, his voice shaking. "But the computing power required, it's beyond anything we thought possible." Dr. Reed approached the sphere, drawn by a feeling she couldn't explain. The equations seemed to call to her, their patterns familiar in a way that made her head spin. When she reached out to touch the surface, the entire chamber came alive. A voice filled the room, speaking in a language that should have been dead for millions of years. But everyone understood it, the words bypassing their ears and appearing directly in their minds. "Protocol 7 activated. Human genetic signature confirmed. Beginning historical record playback." The air around them filled with images, stars being born, civilizations rising and falling. And through it all, humans. Not primitive humans stumbling toward knowledge, but advanced beings who had mastered the forces of nature itself. They watched as their ancestors built wonders across the galaxy, pushed the boundaries of science beyond what should have been possible. And then, "Stop playback," Dr. Reed commanded, her voice cracking. The images froze on a scene that chilled her blood. It showed Earth, but not as they knew it. The continents were different, the oceans glowed with artificial light, and the moon, there were 3 of them. "We did something," she said quietly, "something so big it changed the shape of reality itself." Blue moved closer to the sphere, his instruments recording everything. "The dating system must be wrong. These records suggest human civilization is over 5 million years old. That's exactly what we found," a new voice said. They turned to see Captain Mark entering the chamber, his uniform dusty from the dig. "Every site we've opened in the past week tells the same story. We were first. We built it all. And then we chose to forget." The sphere pulsed, responding to the growing number of humans in the room. More images appeared, showing vast fleets of ships, incredible cities that spanned entire solar systems, and technology that could reshape planets at will. "But why?" Blue asked. "Why would any species choose to forget such power?" Dr. Reed watched as the images continued to play, showing the steady march of human achievement across time. But in the background, she noticed something else, a growing darkness, a cost to all that power that her ancestors had decided was too high to bear. "I think," she said slowly, "we're about to find out. And I'm not sure we're going to like the answer." The screen in front of them flickered with images of the past, each one more incredible than the last. Captain Mark, Dr. Reed, and Blue watched as humanity's true history unfolded before their eyes. The ancient sphere they'd discovered had contained not just data, but memories. The story of why the most powerful species in the galaxy had chosen to start over. "Play the final recording," Dr. Reed said softly. Her voice was hoarse from hours of watching, of learning the truth about her species. The sphere hummed, and a new image appeared. A woman in strange clothing stood before them, her hologram so clear she might have been recorded yesterday, not millions of years ago. "To those who find this message, you are ready to know the truth. We were first. We reached for the stars before any other species had looked up at them. We built wonders that shaped the galaxy. And we almost destroyed everything." The image changed, showing vast ships that could swallow planets whole. Machines that could reshape reality itself. Powers that no species should have held. "We thought we could control it all," the ancient human continued. "We thought we were gods. But power has a price. The more we gained, the more we lost. Our humanity, our wisdom, our ability to see ourselves as part of the universe rather than its masters." Blue's recording devices whirred as they captured every word. The alien scientist had been silent for hours, watching humanity's secret past unfold. The hologram showed a great disaster, tears in space itself, reality breaking down as human technology pushed too far. "We found a way to reach between dimensions," the woman explained, "to harness energy from the space between spaces, but we didn't understand what we were breaking." Captain Mark leaned forward as the recording showed the human response to the crisis. Not more technology, not bigger weapons, but something far more surprising. "We made a choice," the ancient human said, "the hardest choice any species has ever made. We chose to step back, to forget, to start over, not as masters of the galaxy, but as part of it. We locked away our technology, hid our achievements, and modified our own genes to forget." Dr. Reed's hand touched her tablet, where she'd been collecting evidence of this great forgetting. "The gaps in our evolution," she whispered, "they weren't gaps at all. They were restart points." The hologram continued. "We didn't destroy our knowledge. We hid it, protected it, saved it for a time when we would be wise enough to use it properly. We scattered our technology across the galaxy, placed guardians to watch over it, and then we chose to be born again, to grow up as a young species, learning wisdom before power this time." The chamber filled with new images, the careful work of erasing their tracks, of hiding their true nature, of preparing for a future when humanity would rediscover itself. "All those myths," Captain Mark said suddenly. "Dragons guarding ancient treasures, magic words that could reshape reality. They weren't myths at all. They were memories we couldn't quite forget." Blue moved closer to the hologram. "Your people chose to become less than they were, to give up being gods. No other species in the galaxy would make such a choice. That's exactly why they made it," Dr. Reed replied. "Look at the dating on these records. They didn't just hide their past. They helped shape the galaxy for what came after. They made sure other species would have a chance to evolve, to grow, to reach the stars in their own way." The final images showed the completion of the Great Deception, the careful placing of false evidence, the creation of a new history, the genetic modifications that would let humanity truly forget what they had been. "And now you know," the ancient human said. "You've found this message because you were ready to find it. The question you must answer is, are you ready to remember? Not to reclaim our power. That would be the old mistake again. But to remember why we chose this path. To understand that true wisdom sometimes means choosing not to use the power you have." The hologram faded, leaving them in silence. Outside, the world continued as normal, unaware that humanity's greatest secret had finally been revealed. The truth of how the first and most powerful species in the galaxy had chosen to become its youngest, all to learn what their power had once made them forget. The first signs appeared in hospitals around the world. Doctors reported patients healing from injuries that should have been fatal, children surviving accidents that defied medical explanation. At first, the cases seemed random, scattered across the globe like drops of rain before a storm. Captain Mark stood at the window of the orbital station, watching the Earth below. In the week since they'd discovered the truth about humanity's past, things had started changing. The ancient systems weren't just waking up, they were reaching out. Another site just activated in the Pacific, Dr. Reed said, entering the observation deck. Her tablet displayed a map dotted with glowing points. The ocean floor just opened up. There's a facility down there that's been waiting for millions of years. Blue floated nearby, his anti-gravity unit humming softly. The alien scientist had refused to leave Earth orbit since the discovery. The genetic locks are failing, he said. Your people's chosen amnesia is wearing off. On the main screen, news reports from around the world played in silent succession. A boy in a car crash had walked away without a scratch, his body glowing with a faint blue light. A woman trapped in a burning building had somehow passed through the walls to safety. The ancient powers weren't just returning. They were remembering how to work with human bodies. The old records called it integration. Dr. Reed explained, pulling up data from the sphere they'd found. Our ancestors didn't just have advanced technology. They had changed what it meant to be human. And now those changes are waking up in our DNA. An alert flashed across the station's systems. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, something massive had just come online. The sensors showed a structure larger than Earth's moon, hidden in plain sight for millions of years. It's a shipyard, Mark said, reading the incoming data. No, it's THE shipyard, where they built the vessels that could cross between dimensions. His hands trembled slightly as he remembered the warning from their ancestors about the dangers of such power. In the medical bay below, more reports were coming in. People involved in accidents were showing impossible abilities, rapid healing, enhanced strength, even the power to manipulate energy itself. The locked genetic memories weren't just returning, they were transforming modern humans into what they once had been. We need to make a decision, Dr. Reed said quietly. These changes, they're happening faster than we expected. The safeguards our ancestors put in place are failing. Soon, every human on Earth will start remembering, start changing. Blue's instruments whirred as they recorded everything. Your people chose to forget this power once, he said. But perhaps that's not the answer this time. Perhaps the question isn't whether to remember, but how to remember wisely. The station shuddered as another ancient system activated somewhere in the solar system. On Earth, more facilities were waking up, rising from beneath oceans, emerging from mountains, appearing in places where humans had lived for thousands of years without knowing what lay beneath their feet. A group of children played in a park below, their forms now surrounded by faint auras of energy as their ancient heritage began to surface. They didn't seem frightened by their new abilities. They were adapting, learning, understanding instinctively what their ancestors had taken years to master. The sphere showed us why they chose to forget, Mark said, watching the children. They had power without wisdom. But now, he gestured at the playing children. Maybe we've learned enough to handle it this time. Maybe that was the point all along. Dr. Reed's tablet chimed with another alert. The ancient database was revealing more of its secrets, showing them not just what humanity had been, but what they could become. Not conquerors, not gods, but guardians. Teachers, guides for the younger species who were watching Earth with growing wonder and fear. We can't stop it now, she said. The awakening has begun. The only choice we have is what we do with it. Below them, Earth continued to change as more and more humans began to remember what they truly were, not through the brutal awakening of power that their ancestors had feared, but through a gentler dawn of understanding. The first species was remembering itself, not as masters of the galaxy, but as its earliest children, finally old enough to understand their place in it. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every known species crowded the vast space, their eyes fixed on the human delegation. Captain Mark stood at the center, Dr. Reed and Blue beside him, as the evidence of humanity's true nature played on the massive screens above. The balance of power has already shifted, the council leader said, his crystalline form glowing with concern. We've detected your ancient facilities activating across 12,000 star systems. Technology that we thought was natural formation, ruins we believed belonged to long-lost species. All of it was yours. Mark watched the faces around him, some filled with fear, others with wonder, and many with barely hidden desire for what humanity now possessed. The awakening hadn't just changed humans on Earth. Every human colony, every settlement across the stars, was remembering. We didn't come here to claim power, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We came to share knowledge. He nodded to Dr. Reed, who activated the sphere they'd brought with them. The chamber filled with light as humanity's complete history played out. Not just their rise to power and their choice to forget, but the careful way they had guided the galaxy's development even in their sleep. Hidden guardians had watched over emerging species, subtle influences had prevented devastating wars, and ancient technology had protected worlds that needed time to grow. Your people were never truly gone, Blue said, addressing the council. They became the galaxy's gardeners, tending to all of us while we grew. The stories every species tells about mysterious benefactors, about guardian spirits who appeared in times of need. They were watching over us all along. In orbit above them, the massive ancient shipyard had begun producing again. But not warships or world-enders. These vessels were different, designed to heal damaged planets, to help young civilizations take their first steps into space, to bridge the gaps between different species. We remember everything now, Dr. Reed said, touching controls that only responded to human DNA. But we remember it differently. We understand now what our ancestors learned. That power isn't about control. It's about responsibility. The screen showed new images, human children playing with alien young, sharing the simple abilities that had awakened in them. Ancient human technology responding to the touch of other species, teaching rather than dominating. The carefully hidden libraries of human knowledge opening not just to humanity, but to all who were ready to learn. A representative from one of the youngest species stood up, their feathers bristling with emotion. But what's to stop you from taking control? You have the power. You built the foundations of everything we know. Why share it? Mark smiled, remembering the children he'd seen playing on Earth. Because that's the lesson our ancestors wanted us to learn. They didn't hide their power because they were afraid of others taking it. They hid it because they were afraid of what it had done to them. And now that we remember, we understand why. The sphere projected one final image, a map of the galaxy showing thousands of points of light. Each one represented a place where humanity's ancient knowledge was stored, waiting to be shared. Not weapons or tools of control, but libraries, schools, healing centers. The infrastructure for a galaxy where species grew together instead of competing for power. We're not reclaiming our place as rulers, Dr. Reed explained. We're remembering our original purpose, to be teachers, guardians, guides, to help every species find their own path to the stars. Blue's instruments recorded everything, but his 4 eyes were fixed on the human delegates. He had watched them discover their heritage, had seen them struggle with the weight of it. And now he watched as they chose, once again, to put wisdom before power. The council chamber erupted in discussion as species debated what this meant for the future. But among the noise, something new was happening. Representatives from different worlds were coming together, sharing ideas, seeing possibilities they had never imagined before. Above them all, the ancient human shipyard continued its work, building not an empire, but a bridge between stars. The first species had awakened not to rule the galaxy, but to help it grow into something greater than any one civilization could create alone. 1 year had passed since humanity remembered who they were. The ancient facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean had become a meeting place for species from across the galaxy. Inside its vast halls, Captain Mark watched as a group of young aliens learned alongside human children, their small hands working together to shape energy into simple patterns of light. Dr. Reed stood beside him, her tablet displaying reports from thousands of similar centers across the stars. The awakening had changed everything, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of an empire reborn, a school had emerged. Instead of conquerors, humanity had become teachers. "The last archive opened today," she said softly. "We finally know the whole story." She gestured to Blue, who activated the central display. The true history of the first species filled the air around them. The images showed humanity's first steps into space, millions of years ago. They had been alone then, the first children of the galaxy to look up at the stars and find a way to reach them. They had built wonders, reshaped worlds, and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "But that wasn't what almost destroyed us," Mark said, watching the history unfold. "It was what we found between the dimensions." The display showed the great tear in reality their ancestors had created, the power they had tried to harness from the space between spaces. They thought they could control it. Blue explained to the gathered audience of humans and aliens. The energy between realities, the power to reshape existence itself. But they didn't understand what they were touching. The images showed the catastrophe that had followed, reality itself beginning to unravel, the laws of physics breaking down, the very fabric of space and time starting to tear. But then came humanity's greatest discovery: the power of choosing not to use power. "Our ancestors didn't just hide who they were," Dr. Reed said. "They rebuilt the galaxy. They created safe spaces for new species to evolve. They became guardians instead of gods." The display showed the careful work of millions of years, the hidden watchers, the subtle guides, the protectors who had chosen to forget their own power so they could learn to use it wisely. A small alien child floated up to the display, its tentacles glowing with newly learned abilities. "But why didn't they just fix everything with their big machines?" it asked. Mark smiled, remembering asking the same question when they first discovered the truth. Because fixing everything wasn't the answer. Growing together was. The final images showed the present day. Hundreds of species learning from humanity's stored knowledge, but not just copying it. They were creating something new together. The ancient human technology was adapting, evolving as it combined with the unique perspectives and abilities of younger species. "The greatest power," Blue said, his 4 eyes gleaming with understanding, "isn't in controlling reality. It's in helping it grow." Outside the facility, great ships built by human hands millions of years ago now carried mixed crews of dozens of species. They weren't searching for power anymore, but for understanding. The vast libraries of human knowledge had turned out to contain more questions than answers, more mysteries to solve together than solutions to simply copy. The youngest humans were showing abilities their ancestors had never imagined, their powers shaped by growing up alongside alien species, learning to see the universe through many different eyes. The older humans had remembered not just their ancient abilities, but the wisdom that came with choosing how to use them. Dr. Reed activated the sphere one last time, showing the message their ancestors had left for them. But now, watching it alongside representatives from across the galaxy, they understood it differently. The first species hadn't hidden their power out of fear or shame. They had stored it away like parents saving an inheritance, waiting for their children to be old enough to understand it. "We are the first," Mark said to the gathered crowd, "but that doesn't make us the best. It makes us responsible." Our ancestors knew that true power isn't about being the strongest or the oldest. It's about helping others find their own strength. As he spoke, the ancient machines hummed with new energy, responding not just to human DNA now, but to the combined potential of all species working together. The first species had awakened not to reclaim their place as rulers of the galaxy, but to fulfill their original purpose, to be the ones who helped new life reach for the stars. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't in being first. It was in making sure they wouldn't be the last.